Welcome back to Raised by Giants live discussion. Good to see everyone. Welcome everyone in the chat and any moderators and channel members out there, and to anyone that's listening to the replay. Thanks for joining us. And if you're listening to the show on the audio only, welcome. And if you're watching on YouTube or X, be sure to follow the audio only podcast on all podcast platforms as a backup. You can set it to where the shows are automatically downloaded upon release. I listen to a lot of podcasts while I'm driving, cooking, in the shower, on Spotify, which makes things a lot easier. So follow the show on Apple Podcast, Amazon, iHeartRadio, Google Podcast, and you'll never miss a show. A Clockwork Shining is now available on Tubi. Anywhere you can download the Tubi app, you can now watch the documentary, A Clockwork Shining, on Tubi. So even if you've seen it already on Amazon Prime, watch it again on Tubi. I have the link in the description. I don't have it pinned to the chat right now, but I'll get it in the chat here soon. So with that down, introducing our guest today, JJ Vance is the host of Operation GCD podcast, and perhaps more notably, not the vice president on Operation GCD podcast. JJ offers a shenanigan-infused journey into secret societies, occult groups, and ancient mounds of America and other taboo subjects in our modern era. JJ Vance, not the vice president. Welcome to the show. How's it going?
Ryder, greetings, sir. Appreciate the invite and introduction, and looking forward to the conversation.
Do people really think that you're the vice president?
Not only do I get messages on Twixter from folks that think that that I'm the vice president, Grok AI on Twixter thinks I'm the vice president. I like to jokingly play with the AI to make some images and stuff, and I keep telling it to make some Operation GCD themed, artwork and images, and it keeps pumping out images with JD Vance on it. So why it does that, I'm not sure. But clearly, Grok thinks JD Vance hosts the Operation GCD podcast, and I sure Grok he is incorrect. JJ Vance hosts the Operation GCD podcast, and yeah, not the vice president.
Hey, that might be some good promotion now, bro.
I like it though.
Might get more people to watch.
It's a good bit.
Yeah, we've been on a couple of shows together.
Yeah.
And I thought it was time to bring you on over here. What got you started down this journey into occult research and, investigating these secret societies and stuff? From my understanding, you were in the military, you were in the Air Force for a long time, and you traveled around and got a lot of information that way. So how did this start for you, since it's your first time on the show?
No, yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I definitely my background has definitely led me 100%, especially my childhood, to where I'm at today with my interest in today's topic of ancient alien cargo cults. But to backtrack a bit there, yeah, we've done a couple shows together there, Ryder, on this subject of these ancient alien cargo cults, and I definitely appreciate your views and perspectives on this matter. You have a wealth of knowledge amongst these different varying cults that you've documented on your podcast. And the last one we did with Headless on Headless's show, you joined me on Operation GCD before, but we were a guest there on Headless's show, and Headless had brought some interesting perspectives as well on the topic of this matter, because there he is, Headless, right there. Yep, good to see you, bud. Yeah, he I was unaware of this Johannes Kepler fellow and this this early Rosicrucianism in America that was centered around this earlier kind of ancient alien apocalyptic cargo cult that existed right outside Philadelphia at the turn of the 17th century, right? So like 1695 or so, I think it started. So yeah, so I appreciate those conversations we've had in the past. Again, folks want to check those out, I highly recommend it. And then again, I think we initially met over there on Occult Rejects when you and your associate Jay Wider were a guest on your JFK documentary, and that was it's a good piece of work there as well. I certainly enjoyed that, and your Kubrick documentary.
Thank you very much, man. I really appreciate it. A lot of work and time and effort goes into making these things, so appreciate your kind words.
Oh,
now,
sure.
Where were you stationed in the military and what was your rank in the military as in being in the Air Force?
Sure. Yeah, I did 20 years and grew up a Mormon. like any good Mormon, I was a Boy Scout and Eagle Scout, and like most good Mormon boys, they go on a mission or they join the military. You know what I mean? So that's kind of the route. Most of my peer group within that I grew up with, at least the Mormon Church, that's kind of how they went. And so I joined the military at the age of 17. Joined the Air Force. I didn't want to go on a mission for the Mormons. I did go to seminary school though, which is a requirement. If you want to go on a mission or you want to go to BYU, if you're a Mormon, you got to go to seminary school, which is, kind of they offer it in varying capacities. I did it for an hour and a half before high school every day. I would go to the church and go do that, their education course for their theologies and philosophies, and deeper dive into those things than you get on a regular Sunday, right? And did that and graduated. Again, I had no intent of going on a mission or to BYU, but my folks did, at least, right? That's kind of what they were directing me at. But I joined the Air Force and hung up my magical underwear, my magical Mormon underwear, at the age of 22 there. So early on in my career, but I did 20 years in the military police, Air Force. So I retired as a master sergeant at 20 years. I also made master sergeant. Some argue I was the youngest master sergeant at the time in the Air Force. I think I made it in just under 10 years, but I was, 26 years old. So had a meteoric rise. Was kind of the poster child of the Air Force military police for a number of years. SWAT team leader. I was a teenage SWAT team leader. So that's what I like to joke around about. Technically, I was 20, but I looked like I was 14. So,
what was your favorite country that you were stationed at or that you went to in the airport? 'Cause I've never been outside of the country. I've never been outside of the United States. I always wanted to, but the opportunity hasn't presented itself yet for me to travel outside of the country. What was your favorite place that you were stationed?
Well, that's a good question, Ryder. So, where have you been around the U.S.? You've been around most of the U.S. You just haven't been outside of it.
West Coast, East Coast. I've been pretty much Colorado, California, Arizona, Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky, Michigan.
There you go. You've seen it all. You've seen most of the U.S. Then it sounds like.
Besides, like the northern parts of the U.S., I've never been to West Coast or Northeast Coast, further up than Pennsylvania. I've never been to New York or anything like that.
Oh man, that's some gorgeous country up there. I'm a bootleg Vermonter. I was born in Connecticut, raised in Vermont, West Virginia, and Ohio.
Yeah, some good land. Rich land out that way. But I just don't like the East Coast, dude. The East Coast, the people are way different.
They're super uptight. Very crusty compared to the West Coast. I will agree with you on that. So I had the ability to travel all the United States, not only where I was stationed at in the Air Force, but I worked at headquarters and various headquarters assignments. The Air Force has multiple commands throughout, their hierarchy. So I worked at some of the subordinate commands, and I worked at the D.C. headquarters, Department of Air Force, for a number of years, 6 actually in D.C. I survived the swamp 6 years. It's a fucking, it's a nightmare. It's a nightmare.
I give you brain rot, dude.
Yeah. I have no interest in politics, so never have. Only time I ever voted was under duress, and that's a different story altogether. But the long and the short of it is I've just never cared, either side of it. I think they're both politics is a fancy word to not do the right thing, in my opinion. So they don't like that attitude in DC. So you got to pick a side, and you don't pick any side, even if you're in the military there. So I managed the budget for many years when you learn how to do math real well, especially in a career field like the Air Force military police, which is the lowest score, ASVAB score, the aptitude test to get into the Air Force. The minimum qualification job you land in is military police. And I aced the test, and I remember my recruiter telling me, like, he's like, you're gonna have a real hard time in that career field as a cop. And I'm like, well, that's what I want to do, buddy. He was trying to talk me out of being an MP, and I and choose something else because I qualified for every job. But it's not a humble brag hour. I was just explaining that you're dealing with some when you know how to do math in that environment. You quickly make you quickly move up in that environment when you have to do math. So I found myself managing the budget at headquarters. Like I said, by 10 years into my career. So when you're managing money in DC, you got lobbyists you got to deal with. Part of the military budget. You got congressional offices that are knocking on your door for putting in earmarks and stuff. Getting your buy off on and stuff like that. It gets real ridiculous real fast. I'm just saying the political aspect of it is pretty ridiculous. For a long story short, I volunteered to go back over to Iraq just to get out of that environment. Just to put that into context, I found Baghdad to be a more favorable work environment than Washington D.C.
Wow, that's saying a lot right there. What was Baghdad like? Because really, the only thing that we have is I don't think that the United States gets enough information about like other countries and what other countries are doing. And I've been saying that for a really long time. We only know about what other countries are like when there's something bad going on. When
Sure.
there's something really rough and they plaster it all over the news. But we don't really know unless you're specifically looking up certain countries and doing study on them, going to people don't use libraries anymore, but unless you're really interested in a certain country, you don't really know exactly how it operates. Like you don't know what the
Right.
government structure is like. You don't know what the politics is like there. You don't know what the living conditions are at all. So what was Baghdad like?
No, you make some good points, and I mean, most of the folks I served with would fall into that environment. They had no clue what the the situation politically, religiously, socioeconomically speaking in these various deployments I went on over my career. But Baghdad, yeah, it was an interesting place. So I actually got to see Baghdad from. Well, I mean, there's a good reason why folks don't know. I mean, most folks in America are pretty tarded. Folks don't even know their own state capitals these days and stuff like that, or can't identify things on a map. Like it's gotten pretty bad. The Department of Education did its dirty work since '78, and I think they've dumbed down America pretty well. But the Baghdad, so I actually got the astute honor, if you want to call it that, to see Baghdad from start to finish as far as Air Force operations went. So I was delivering goods and folks there at the early onset of the Iraq invasion at the Baghdad International Airport, setting up the Air Force camp there at the airport terminal. So the Air Force encampment there serves as the airport terminal there at the backside of, or did at the backside of the Baghdad International Airport, which was not a hole in the wall. I mean, a lot of folks think this is like some back world country. I mean, Saddam spent a lot of money on, on a lot of things there, and again, most of the things that he was not spending money on and war against it was all religious war. And it's a religious war that's been going on there for many, many years. And the U.S.'s problem with Saddam was the problem they had with most leaders they instill, right? Was that they put this guy in power to be a puppet, and he's like, nah, I'm going to do my own thing. That's what Gaddafi did. It's time and time again. That's what the circumstances are. But it wasn't a third world country by any means, and certainly not the airport and the surrounding area there, which is most of the experience that I had there. But so I was there in November of 2003. And then as a young staff sergeant, and then like I said, delivering goods and stuff in the buildup. So I got to kind of see what it looked like then, and then I got to see what it looked like in 2011. I spent 9 months over there, and I shut the place down. That was when I left DC. That was kind of one of the things I was, the negotiations in which I achieved to get out of my hole in DC was I had some additional responsibilities to ensure that place got closed down properly and signed over to the Department of State, the Air Force camp there at the airport. So, I was there for the whole drawdown. So as we drew down troops in 2011 there, like January through September, I guess. And then we had a smaller footprint. We just kept reducing the size of our base, but ultimately it got turned over to the Department of State, and they set up shop there. But it was a night and day difference. I mean, it was so much worse when we left than when we got there. I can tell you that much.
So we didn't really help, is what you're saying. JJ Vance, not the president.
Doesn't seem that way, right? Here's a good story. Not a good story, but a good example. So, in that transition, we were trying to train the Air Force, the Iraqi Air Force. So, I was one of my jobs there for the military police unit on the base was I was the superintendent of logistics and resources, we had a big 1,000-man unit, and you have to have a division of that unit that does all the the guns, the ammo, all the support and logistics aspects like that. Alarms, all sorts of stuff. But so I was in charge of that unit of our squadron, and the it's is the I don't know. It's just the whole. I guess what I'm getting is the whole experience. Yeah, none of it was good. So when we were trained, part of our duties was I just I'm replaying some of these activities in my brain hole right now as I'm describing the story. But yeah, it's one I haven't thought of in a while, Ryder. But yeah, the one of our duties there, my section was training the Iraqi MPs. Right, so we had our training section there that I was in charge of as well in that section. So one of our duties there was in this transition was training these guys they were getting part of the base that we were comprising, right? They were getting part of that airfield. We were training their Iraqi Air Force MPs on, basic elements of security and whatnot, right? So, after like a 6-week or 8-week training course we did with these guys, their general through like a big dinner for my guys, my team and whatnot. And we had a dinner with these guys. The general leaves that dinner, drives home, gets murked on the way home at a stoplight. 2 dudes on motorcycles come up and murked dude with some guns on both sides of his car. So, it was a real rocky environment outside of whatever the U.S. was doing there, right? There were some internal situations going on there amongst the Iraqis.
Yeah, wasn't the whole thing to invade to find the weapons of mass destruction? Turns out there's no weapons of mass destruction, and then it turned into we need to liberate these people, and then it turns out that we didn't do either one of those things.
Yes, sir, that's correct. I don't even think we got the oil deals. That went to mainly BP and Shell, I think.
But we were there guarding the poppy fields, though. We need to guard that heroin.
That was Afghanistan, yes, sir. That's a whole different nightmare altogether, quite honestly.
Chad Warren wants to know if you ever worked in any underground bases in the Air Force. Does the Air Force have underground bases that you're aware of?
I'm sure they do. I mean, if you look at Cheyenne Mountain, I suppose that's an underground base. That's an Air Force station out there in Colorado with the NORAD stuff. But no, I've never been assigned to any underground bases, Chad, no. To answer your question.
What a shame.
I was stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base for 3 years as a patrolman. Early in my career as a young staff sergeant, I was a patrolman there for 3 years. And, there's a lot of spooky tales around that establishment. I worked night shift and I saw a lot of strange things, but never any, and they do have underground stuff there, a lot of underground tunnels and whatnot. So, because it was one of the biggest bases they started building after World War II. So the Cold War environment, all these bases that were built up during the Cold War environment, they all have underground stuff, right? Because that was the nature of the Cold War was we're going to start doing all of our operations underground and build underground bunkers and stuff. So there's a lot of bases with underground. I mean, I know it's a trope across conspiracy culture that it's kind of, it gets kind of bastardized, I guess. But, there are certainly underground bases. There's no question about it.
What did you hear about Wright-Patterson Air Force Base while you were there? Because that's the whole thing about Roswell, the alien UFO crash, the bodies and the wreckage taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base. Some of it was taken to Area 51, and now supposedly everyone is all of a sudden in agreement that Bigelow Aerospace has the craft now, and they've reverse engineered it or whatever. Were there rumors and what people were talking about while you were stationed at Wright-Patterson Air Force Base? Like, what did other people talk about while you were there? Were they like, this is where the aliens are, this is where the UFO
Yeah, there's all those kind of stories for sure. You get that kind when you first get there. So, I mean, there is a place there on the, I think folklore calls it Hangar 18, I believe, right? So, but the actual hangar it's not 18. It's got a different different designator. It is Hangar 4. But whether or not that is the site of alien stuff, I couldn't tell you. It is. I can tell you, it's pretty locked up, and we were never allowed in there when they had an alarm. We would just have to wait for like an alarm. As the MPs and patrol and security of the installation. If there's a building alarm, you gotta. Sometimes you go in, sometimes you don't. If it's an alarm, there's no door open, then you don't go in. You're not one of those top secret facilities like that. You wait for the top secret building security manager to show up in the middle of the night, get woken up out of bed, and eventually make their happy ass out there in the middle of the night. But the one time Hangar 4's door was open, and I can tell you that all I saw in there was a one of these incidents. Someone just left the door wide open, but it was just a big empty hangar and with an elevator in the middle. So whatever's going on there, it's seemed to be subterranean. You know what I mean?
What?
The elevator was going down. It wasn't up.
There was an elevator shaft in the middle of the hangar?
Yeah, so just one floor hangar, and then in the middle of just big empty hangar, and then in the middle of it just an elevator shaft, right? You know what I mean? Just an elevator that went down. And I would later talk to the electrician that they would run around to these buildings at night. After a couple of years getting to know this guy, he'd be the guy. He's got badges and clearances anytime he has to go into these facilities and mess with the wiring, electrics, or fix something. I asked the dude what was going on in that one. He told me it went down 8 floors. So I don't know. I never seen it, wouldn't know, but that was what the electrician told me.
Wow.
I can tell you this. I have been in tunnels in Wright-Patterson Air Force Base because on slow nights, boring nights, we used to convene at the Presidential Aircraft Museum hangar and access it through the tunnel system and have wheelchair races next to the plane that JFK, was transported on back from Dallas.
They have that in a hangar there?
Yeah, it's in the Presidential Aircraft Museum hangar in Area B of Wright-Patterson.
Wow, and it's just like on display, like anyone can go?
Yeah, you can go there. It's the Air Force Museum is open. It's a different building, but that's an annex of that main museum building. They have every aircraft there. It's quite a museum to go see. Supposedly it's haunted. We used to have a lot of alarms there too, but I've never seen any ghosts. I can just say there was the building manager that would respond to that building would always describe how they were always frightened to go in there at night.
So does the tunnels lead to different parts of the base, and are only personnel and military personnel aware of the tunnels, or I'm guessing that only military personnel is really allowed on the base. It's not really going to be a civilian. Civilians can't just walk onto a military base and start looking around. But do different tunnels lead to different sections of the base?
Oh, for sure. They have 3 different areas of the base, and each area allegedly connects through tunnels, and they have a main headquarters building, which the subfloors of that, it was just MP and security dude would get bored some nights and just start wandering around buildings when I probably shouldn't have been wandering around buildings type of deal. You know what I mean? But I had access to do so. So in the headquarters building, it's the headquarters of Air Force Material Command there, right, Pat? So these are the folks that do all the testing for everything. And this is, we were mentioning the Roswell stuff. This is why they were involved, because they were allegedly testing these materials from Roswell and reverse engineering stuff there through the Air Force Research Laboratories, AFRL, and Air Force Research Laboratories, and Air Force AFIT, Air Force Intelligence. I don't know. AFIT and AFRL were they're the 2 subordinate organizations that are on base within the Air Force Material Command that they're responsible for the Project Blue Book, right? That was run out of those offices. They're responsible for the that's the investigation and all the stuff subsequent to Roswell. Now, my issues with Roswell is that it kind of, for me to buy into any of these alien stuff. Well, first of all, I hung up my Mormon magical alien underwear, 20 almost 23 years ago. But the idea for me to trust any of these ideas of alien stuff, even within this, this sphere of Roswell and Project Blue Book and stuff, is it violates one of my fundamental rules in life, and that is never trust a Nazi. Because it's Nazis that have perpetrated all these things. So the Nazis were stationed there at Roswell. That was the epicenter of their activity. There was already a team movement, right, Pat? They linked up after the Roswell incident, right?
That's right. It seems like that the Roswell incident was a test flight from man-made technology that crashed, and nobody knew about it because it was a top secret classified aircraft technology. And whenever it crashed, the generals and everybody had no idea what it was because they didn't have the need to know what it was. And there could have been, you know, those rumors of like
spot on target there, Ryder, for sure. The need to know, right? It's all compartmentalized.
and if he and it's also rumored that maybe there was like chimpanzees on it as well because they wanted to test the altitude of how what it would do on like a something that resembled a human being at a certain altitude as well. So that could have been mistaken
Sure.
as like aliens too. But I mean, that's a test site. That whole thing is that test site there at Roswell is one of the well at that time was one of the largest running flight test strips of anywhere in the United States.
Still is. Yeah, it's the White Sands Missile Range. It connects from Fort Biggs or Biggs Army Airfield down at Fort Bliss all the way up to the Roswell Air Force Base. And where's the one where Paul Benowitz and Doty were out of? That was Kirtland, right?
Yeah, that was Kirkland Air Force Base. Yeah.
So I think a lot of these things shifted over once Roswell went out of commission as an Air Force Base. They shifted over to Kirtland down the road, which again is at the north end of this White Sands Missile Complex, this enormous bombing and missile complex. It's used for a lot of other training. I've trained in that missile complex for small arms training and close quarters combat, that kind of thing. There's some various shoot houses throughout there for that kind of thing as well. So it's a huge complex, but it does stretch all the way down to the border, right? So these Nazis, Project Paperclip style Nazis with these rockets and whatnot and these alien stuff, they came in through the border there in El Paso from the Vatican. They got fake credentials from the Vatican embassy in Tijuana. I know this because I've tracked some of these actual things down. At least this is the facts for at least a number of them, right? They got fake credentials, came in through there, set up shop in El Paso at Biggs Army Airfield, which is the still active today. It's actually I built the largest training center for the Air Force military police at Biggs Army Airfield back in circa 2013. So it's a huge training center today for the Air Force military police. They're at that location still today. But back then it was just all Nazi stuff with these rocket engineers, right? This was the early onset of the Air Force creation, right, in 47. So when all this stuff was popping off, right? We get Roswell, we get multiple alien sightings up there, Pacific Northwest, surrounding these very spooky elements, and we get the onset of the CIA, NASA, and the Air Force and the National Security Act of 1947, which causes everyone without a need to know to never know because of these compartmentalized, top secret, stamped national security. You know what I mean? And suddenly, if you don't have a need to know, you'll never know.
Yep, Kenneth Arnold and Roswell. Kenneth Arnold seeing the things up in Washington that he never said was in the shape of a saucer. He said that they flew like saucers. He didn't say that the craft was in the shape of a saucer. Roswell also happened in that same year. Then when you get into the Paul Benowitz stuff, like pretty much he was just misidentifying a bunch of test flights of military craft that he could see from his back porch at his house right outside of Kirkland Air Force Base. And
for sure, and that's if I may, Ryder, that's part of that same command there at Wright-Patterson, right? So that's what I'm saying. They may have just shifted a lot of these things over when the operations in the same geographical area, right, from Roswell to Kirtland. But yeah, it's goes right back to Wright-Pat.
Yeah, if anything is happening near an Air Force base, it's pretty safe to say that it's the military. Okay, right. It's military technology.
No, I totally agree. I used to, at Wright-Pat, I used to see a lot of strange things in the skies, you know what I mean? But I would never describe them as anything other than man-made.
Did you ever file a report on anything that you've seen, or did multiple people see it, or did you ever comment or tell anybody that you've seen something strange?
Oh, for sure. So, again, slow nights, you know what I mean? Working night shift for numerous years there. We had a lot of busy nights because, Wright-Patterson Air Force Base, it's on the east side of Dayton, and Freeway Rick Ross and the CIA use that as Dayton, Ohio, as the distribution point for the Midwest for their crack cocaine networking. So crack hit Dayton real bad, and on the east side specifically. So, and we have a housing complex right there that butted up against Crackland, USA. So I used to have to bust the skulls of a lot of crackheads at one point in time, but we have some slow nights, and the folks would be coming on base housing and stuff like that, doing hood rat shit. So We had some slow nights, and we had a hot pad, which like if you had on the airfield, right, Pat. So if you had like ammo or something like that, you had an aircraft that had ammo or cargo that was considered, explosives or whatever. You couldn't park it near the main aircraft or terminal. You had to go down to the hot pad at the end of the air kind of way off in the corner, right? But it's behind the fence and restricted and everything, so no one can get in there really, and you can see headlights coming down there if someone's coming. So that was my nap time spot. So around 2:30, 3 in the morning, I'd go down there and take it, that's my zone out for a bit, right, on the slow night specifically. Because I wouldn't get off shift till 7, so that's the last kind of bit of the shift. I'm like, I want to squeeze in a nap or two before rush hour comes in the morning. So I go down there, and then after a couple nights, I'd start seeing all these aircraft come over across the airfield on the backside where that area B is. So this is area A. So area B is just down the road a little bit, but where where all the hangar 4 is, where all the the top secret labs are and all that stuff is, where the Air Force Museum, all that stuff's area B. Area A is where the Wright brothers tested their aircraft, right? That's where they did all their flight testing on some mounds there in Area A, right? But it's just right down the road, so you can see it kind of coming over the forest, right? There's mainly just trees in between and whatnot. You see these lights coming up over the forest, but they're clearly coming from the Area B region, and they're doing, maneuvers that you would not normally see from any sort of winged or jet aircraft or even a propellered aircraft. I mean, there's some unique maneuvers, right? And they would fly in formations of like 4 to 6, right? And this would happen almost every night on cue from between 2:30 and 3 in the morning. So after a while, I started calling some of my troops down there to come check it out. So yeah, there was other witnesses for sure, but no, I wasn't reporting that to anybody. That was my nap spot. I wasn't trying to get too many people involved in that situation, but we'd have a few patrols down there, watching the show.
That is really interesting. And I just asked because I've talked to a few people that have been in the military and have reported seen something really strange in the sky or something anomalous. And then a few other people back it up, and then they essentially just brush it under the rug and tell them never to speak about it again. They file a report, and then they just put the report away somewhere, and no one ever sees the report again.
They file it in the circular filing cabinet known as the trash can.
Yeah, that's right. So,
if I may, Ryder, are you familiar with the infamous Malmstrom Air Force Base UFO incident?
If I am, you would have to jog my memory. Tell me about it.
I think it was circa 1967 or 68. Some unidentified aircraft, flew at a very high rate of speed over the intercontinental ballistic missiles. So those Nazi rockets we were talking about before with Jack Parsons' magical solid state rocket fuel, those are fueling these intercontinental ballistic missiles known as nuclear weapons, right? And these are buried in these nuclear silos across the states of like North Dakota and Wyoming and Montana. So I was stationed in Montana for 3 years at that base, but they had an infamous incident back in the late 60s where this high-speed aircraft, unidentified aircraft that blew up all their radars and was acting funky on the radars, everything, right? And it disconnected all of the nuclear weapons for like a couple minutes after it flew over. So something with that aircraft jammed all the communication systems with the nuclear weapons. Now, I don't know what those communication systems were at the time. I do know they were antiquated come 2015. They were still operating on 5-inch floppy disks in 2015 for targeting systems. So that was in the report. That's public. So there's a lot of drugs, rock and roll going on in these in 2015, so 2014. So in that report, they found out, well, we should probably upgrade these things. We're still targeting our nuclear missiles with 5-inch floppy disks from 1978. So I got a lot of views on nuclear weapons, but nonetheless, these giant Nazi rocket, Jack Parsons magic fuel things sit in these big silos, across Montana, and somehow they got disconnected. They had no ability to launch if they wanted to launch for a number of minutes back during this incident. So that was very popular when I first got stationed there. You heard all about it. It's been in numerous. Don't ask me which documentaries. I just know folks have covered it. Right? There's folks, quote unquote, eyewitnesses that were stationed there that during that time. It happened again when I was there. So This one isn't reported that much that I'm familiar with. There weren't any documentaries, but they lost contact in a similar fashion with a similar aircraft in July of 2001. We'll call it right after circa July 8th, because it was between Independence Day and my birthday, so about halfway in between. So I was on the response team there, and the tactical response force, like the SWAT team, and I was their convoy security team leader, one of the convoy security team leaders there on base. We would transport the nuclear missiles to and from base from these sites. 23,000 square miles of Montana were covered by these missile sites. It was not a small, missile complex, but that was my job at the time. So whenever there was an incident, I was on call, so it was early. It was like 6 a.m. But yeah, something disconnected the stuff that day. And the story we got was another incident like the one in the 60s. So I never saw any paperwork or anything else like that. I just responded and armed up, and we were getting ready to deploy somewhere, to do something. I didn't know what was going on. It's the military. It's a lot of hurry up and wait. They don't tell you a lot of things. You know what I mean? Like, report here, get your guns, sit in this room for a while. You know what I mean? That kind of thing. But yeah, supposedly some sort of unidentified aircraft shut down their nuclear missiles in the 60s. I think it was late 60s. And then again, circa July 2001.
Wow, I've never heard of that one. I've heard of the one in the 60s, but never heard of the one in 2001. But you were there.
I was there. I got called. I got armed up. You know what I mean? We were response to something. You know what I mean?
Did anyone report seeing like a craft? Because I think that the one in the 60s, someone reported seeing like an actual craft that was hovering over the base.
Yeah, I think you're right. And this incident, I don't remember which area of the complex it was in. Like I said, the missile complex covered 23,000 square miles. So some days we would depart base and we wouldn't get to a site for 4 hours, driving up armored Humvees and stuff like that. Some machine guns on top. We got some deputy marshals with us. We were making a scene. When you got 40 millimeter grenade launchers and 50 cal machine guns, you got a helicopter above and stuff like that with machine guns loaded out, whatever. It's quite a spectacle. But in that spectacle, you don't really run into a lot of folks out there. So the eyewitness accounts of out in the middle of nowhere, Montana, would be few and far between, unless we can get the cattle to start talking.
Hey, we might be able to with technology. Elon Musk just needs to put a freaking Neuralink implant chip into all these cows' brains so they can talk psychically with us. They might be able to tell us.
Right. They would have some stories, those Montana cattle, that's for sure.
Before I forget, though, I meant to bring this up earlier when we were talking about Saddam Hussein. So Blink 182's Mark Hoppus actually might have helped the military capture Saddam Hussein. This is a Loudwire article. In Mark Hoppus's brand new book, Fahrenheit 182, a memoir, the rocker shared a story about how he may have actually assisted in the capture of Saddam Hussein back in 2003. Hoppus has touched on the situation on social media before, but in the book, he went into detailed about the plan he came up with to capture one of the most wanted individuals in recent American history. Sir, this is Mark Hoppus talking. Sir, I have a plan on how to catch Saddam Hussein, the musician, recalled telling Navy admiral on board an aircraft carrier in the Persian Gulf. According to Hoppus, Hussein had been sending video messages to his followers from an unknown location at the time. The musician felt that the military could use drones to their advantage and uncover his location by pulling data from the video messages. What do you think about that? You think that Mark Hoppus helped the military catch Saddam Hussein?
It's certainly interesting, right? It's kind of wild. And now I'm thinking Mark Hoppus might be an agent of the Canadian intelligence agencies or something, right?
Well, what's interesting is his dad is a high-ranking military officer. That's how he even knew about this. So essentially what he was telling this Navy admiral was that if you put drones everywhere in the sky or surrounding where Saddam Hussein is, whenever he takes a video, we can pinpoint his location based off if you can hear the background noises of the drones in the video through the micro data of the video, which is
pretty convoluted. Seems a bit convoluted. A lot of work though, right? A lot of drones that you would need for that, right?
You would need a lot of drones. Yes. But I thought that was interesting, and how Mark Hoppus's dad is a high-ranking military officer. Seems like all of these big time musicians and people are all have family that are high ranking military officers, which that's just a coincidence. JJ Vance, not the president.
Right.
Just a
Typical.
coincidence.
So is he a Canadian officer or is he American? Because I was thinking Hoppus was a Canuck.
What?
I didn't know that about his father, but I mean, it's the same pattern over and over again, right?
Yeah, let's do the Wikipedia article and
yeah. While you're looking that up, I was in Qatar when they brought Saddam in from Iraq, right? When they dug him out of his hole, allegedly, right? They brought him down to Qatar, to the army camp there, but they came through the Air Force base, obviously, when they landed. So I don't know who the individual was that they had, but I mean, they bagged and tagged somebody, right?
Okay, so this says that he's an American. So I don't think that he is from Canada, born. No, he was born in California.
Interesting. Okay.
Ridge
he used to produce a lot of
Crest.
Canadian music. I don't know. I guess that's why I assumed he was Canadian.
There's a lot of musicians from Canada. But yeah, Mark Hoppus here, American musician and record producer, is co-lead vocalist, co-founder, and bassist for the rock band Blink-182. He was born March 15th, 1972 in Ridge Crest, California, U.S.
Yeah, I mean, looking back, I mean, there's a lot of alien stuff in their music, right? You know, there was their second album, Enema of the State, I think, or maybe their second hit album, their big hit album, right? You know, their Enema of the State. They have a song, "Aliens Do Exist," right?
Well, then you got Tom DeLonge. He's pretty much the lead front on UFO Disclosure. He's the lead vocalist for Blink-182. So you got Mark Hoppus being his dad, being a high-ranking military officer. You got Tom DeLonge, which is the lead vocalist for Blink-182, essentially quitting the band to pursue UFOs. Hal Puthoff and like all to the Stars Academy, getting all these intelligence people all together to do UFO Disclosure. Then he rejoins the band a couple of years ago. They make a new album. Yeah, it's just a coincidence. That's all it is. Just a coincidence.
Yeah, it's a very odd epicenter of events there. So, you know, I'd like to get your thoughts on his relationship with John Podesta, because that's really what boils down to him, Peter Levenda, and John Podesta, that is. But DeLonge openly I think he's openly a Freemason. He puts the logo on his guitar, right?
I think so too. I think that, yeah, I believe that he is. I could be wrong though.
So that relationship he has with Peter Levenda, who seems to be of a Typhonian flavor of this OTO branch off of this Golden Dawn Hermetic Society of Rosicrucianisms, because it's all one. When you look at all these things, I think from my perspective, it's always repackaging the older ideas with a new flavor, right? And sometimes in the repackaging of older ideas, you're packaging ideas and mashing them together in various capacities, and that's what seemingly goes on over and over again, from the Blavatsky and Theosophy to the Hermetic Order of the Golden Dawn, to the repackaging those ideas with Crowley into his OTO, and so on and so forth, right? That we see that going on today with folks like Podesta and Levenda, who seem to be of this Typhonian flavored offshoot of the OTO, not an official offshoot, but a branch off, right? You familiar with some of those activities?
Yes, I am. I'm just trying to find this guitar with what you're talking about with the Freemason symbol on it. Oh yeah, right here it is.
Yeah.
Here's Tom DeLonge's guitar that has the Freemason sticker on the bottom here. Right jaw.
Yep.
Yeah.
There you go.
I mean, there's a lot to do with Freemasonry and how it's all mixed in. Pretty much every cult has a touch of Freemasonry in it at some point, whether it's like the ritualistic aspects that they do, the way that they dress, their day-to-day life activities. And then when you get into the Order of the Hermetic Dawn, which many people claim is the original like occult teachings. And the Order of the Hermetic Dawn is still a thing to this very day. It's still an order, still active.
Right, and even it's had its numerous offshoots and flavors branching off, right?
Yeah, many of them. I mean, you can, track this back, like you just mentioned with Elena Blavatsky. You can get it to like, Edgar Casey. Even you can get back into Rudolf Steiner as well, like
Sure.
being some of these originators of like this type of theosophy, and them all sort of like borrowing from each other. Like that seems
That's
to be the thing, is like cults just rip off like other cults, right? They'll just take the views and ideas from other people. That, I mean, I've spoken about the Heaven's Gate cult several times, and how they just went around the United States, went to all these different new age centers, talked to yogis and people, and then they just developed the ideas and the thoughts for their cult. I mean, even the cult of I Am in the early 30s did that exact same thing, and they were actually sued by a guy, the dweller of two planets. I forget what his name is, but he wrote a book that was essentially all about Mount Shasta. Now, Mount Shasta is kind of regarded as the I Am, where the I Am cult like originated from, because
sure.
Guy Ballard went to Mount Shasta and supposedly encountered Saint Germain in Mount Shasta, and then the entire belief structure of the I Am cult basically came out of. I mean, if you go to Mount Shasta right now, you're going to run into I Am people. I
Oh,
mean,
big time. I've been there. Yeah, for sure. It's a mystical new age nightmare, if you ask me. But yeah, it's a lovely place, mountain wise and lake wise up there. But yeah, you got a weird environment otherwise, with a lot of this new age mystical QAnon mixed in there now too nowadays, right? With these IM folks, right?
yeah, it's kind of spread out like everywhere. It's become this, everyone says, I am that I am, which then, comes actually out of the Bible as well. And they said in that I am power, like you are the God, right? Like that you are the center of the universe. You are God is essentially what the I am means. And people use it as like an affirmation, like I am that I am. And I think that that comes from Moses in the Bible, if I'm not mistaken. There's a verse that Moses is talking about. The CM here has a question. Says, "I need a serious understanding of what you mean by actually Freemason." Have you read the Freemasonic Bible, JD Vance, not the president?
JJ Vance, yes, sir. I have. I've read some Morals and Dogma. I've read some Manly P. Hall stuff. I found myself familiarizing myself with these topics and subjects, and as I discuss some of them and ask Freemasons, some friends I've had that are Freemasons that I don't think are just bullshitting me. Like, they have modern day Freemasonry is disconnected from these ancient principles in large part amongst their membership. Right, their membership's in there for the boys club, the camaraderie and the networking, economically and business speaking, but they do not know their own theology and philosophies. It's been my experience.
Yeah, a lot of them that are involved in these like clubs that are spread out all through the United States, they have no idea it's like that they're just a part of like a club, and they don't really know anything about the symbolism, or probably never even read the Freemasonic Bible, which the Freemasonic Bible is actually a way better understanding of what the Bible actually means. I mean, it gives you a summary within like the first 50 pages of the Freemasonic Bible that is essentially breaking down the stories of what the Freemasons believe that the Bible actually is. And then it gives you a breakdown of all of what their symbols mean as well.
Oh, for
I
sure.
haven't,
No, I mean, it is the context that's necessary for that understanding, I think, is important.
yeah, I was kind of shocked. I didn't get a chance to read all of it, but I read the initial like 20, 30 pages, and I was like, wow, this is a very detailed explanation, because people have an idea of like what these symbols mean, and they've made it to be like demonic and like all that, and that they're like if there's a Freemasonic symbol, like they're doing a ritual. But if you, I mean, you can get a Freemasonic Bible on Amazon. I'm pretty sure you just type in Freemasonic Bible and you can get one. I don't think that you have to be a Freemason to get a Freemasonic Bible, do you?
I don't know how that works. So I had a friend of mine, his grandfather passed a number of years ago, and this is probably around circa 2012 or 2013. And it was the time when I was reading a lot of Freemasonry stuff, not to join them. I just wanted to understand them, just like any other group or religion. I've read the Quran and other things like that to try to understand these things, right? Not because I wanted to start going to pray to some cargo cult, asteroid rock in Saudi Arabia, but just because I wanted to go, read about stuff. Especially when I'm going to these Muslim nations, that was important for me to understand what kind of environment. I wasn't trying to go, again, do any diplomatic missions. I was just trying to understand what I was getting myself into, right? But yeah, all these ideas, right? So like even these ideas within all the Bible stuff, right? The Freemasonic Bible, the whatever Bible the varying different Bibles there are, right? These concepts get, again, like much like these cults, they get repackaged. So like within the Golden Dawn, these other everything else subsequent to that, they're known as the Hermetic orders, right? These are all Hermetic teachings. These are Hermetic groups, right? Well, that's just a repackaging of older concepts by combining other characters, right? You have like they created Hermes Trismegistus fella by mashing together like Thoth and Hermes, right? So they're mashing together these gods and everything else. Again, we see that even within the offshoots of these cult religions, right? Be it the Golden Dawn, the OTO, etc. Right? So they're using a lot of actually terminology even borrowed from the Vatican and these older religions by even borrowing some of their concepts and structures as well, right? And that's even seen in the incorporation documents of a further down the line Thelemic offshoot organization from the OTO to Scientology to the Process Church, and they're incorporating documents. It's shockingly similar to some of the hierarchy within the Catholic Church and some of the terminology. So a lot of these ideas get packaged together and mashed together for sure. And over time, they, I often wonder if they're not at the top of these organizations, if they're not all doing the same thing, because even the Vatican's an ancient alien cargo cult with they've largely invented our ideas of space, and they own the largest telescopes, et cetera, and have made these discoveries of space through the Vatican hierarchy there with their various astronomers and whatnot from Galileo onward. And I often wonder at the top of these organizations, are they just going to one day come together like Voltron, all these ancient alien cargo cults? They're all doing disparament elements, but they're doing disparament elements for a shared mission at the top of all these organizations. And suddenly they're going to be like, oh shit, we're Voltron. They're all going to come together one day. And maybe in that case, they're all going to blast off the planet and we'll never have to deal with these folks again. But I think that's a little bit too optimistic.
They just got to channel their God, and then the God will give them the technology, tell them how to build their craft, and then they'll all go to freaking Mars and live forever, bro. But here you can get this Master Mason edition of the Holy Bible, leather bound, for $43.99 on Amazon Prime. Someone just mentioned in the chat too that you can get a digital version as well, like you can just buy it digitally. But yeah, dude.
I like your statement there. I mean, that's these concepts you keep saying is the focus of these ancient alien cargo cults with the I am God, right? The I am God aspects and whatnot. Like that is the common trend. That is what Mormonism teaches as well. And another common trend amongst these is the veneration of the Sirius, right? The Sirius worship, right? From Freemasonry to Rosicrucianism to Mormonism, etc. These are all in and around Sirius worship, right? But I got an interesting comment the other day, Ryder, in regards to Mount Shasta. And I wanted to ask if you'd heard about this tale. I haven't got a chance to run any of this information down yet, but it was a interesting comment I received on my YouTube just the other day, claiming I was talking about Mount Shasta and stuff. I think maybe last Friday, maybe or something. I don't know. I'm on Operation GCD, but it says Project Camelot wanted to set up a food and souvenir truck at Mount Shasta. It didn't materialize, but Kevin Spacey was apparently involved. It's a weird comment, but I could definitely see some stuff being true with Mount Shasta, Kevin Spacey, and the setup of a food truck by the Project Camelot folks, right? Like, again, I haven't run any of this information down, but have you heard anything in that regard before?
You're talking Project Camelot with Carrie Cassidy?
Yes, sir.
What? No, I did not hear about this. No.
Okay. Well, I'll get back to you if there's any validity to it. When we were talking about Mount Shasta, I was like, I got a funny Mount Shasta comment there today.
Wow. It's weird how everyone was so against Kevin Spacey and like all the weird shit that he was doing, and supposedly I think that he wasn't involved with an underage boy or something like that. I don't know. I didn't look into it too much, but then now everyone's like, "Oh, well, he didn't do it." Like, what do you mean, bro?
Right. Well, here's an interesting story if you're not too familiar with it. So a lot of the reason why that's all gotten swept under the rug, in my opinion, is because Kevin Spacey and Prince Andrew used to be boyfriends. So according to about 2 baker's dozen victims over at a London, England playhouse, where Kevin Spacey was the playhouse director for about 7 years, he got that job because Prince Andrew told the playhouse to hire him. And during those approximate 7 years, approximately a couple baker's dozen young men and boys were allegedly raped by both of these men. Lawsuits were settled out to a lot of money, and Spacey was fired. So, he has a lot of cleanup crew behind him, right? Like, there's a lot of these tales get swept under the rug.
Well, that's kind of sort of coming out about Henry Cavill as well.
Oh, I didn't know that. That's interesting. He's kind of their leading star of Britainland, right? One of the leading actors over there for Hollywood out of the British land.
A little bit. Now, there obviously isn't any, 100% truth to it. Like, we don't have like documentative evidence, but apparently he likes young girls. I don't know, like underage girls.
Sure.
And that's why he doesn't stay with the project for very long. Like, if you notice, like, it was like Superman for a couple movies. He gets off of Superman. He goes to The Witcher. They were supposed to do 5 seasons of The Witcher. He backed out on season 3. He was in a contract for 5 seasons of The Witcher.
Oh.
Then he broke the contract, and now because he was supposed to go back as Superman, and then they got rid of him as Superman, and then now he's on some other Amazon thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he was supposed to be Bond at one point too, or at least was in the conversation, right?
Yep. No, that's just the rumor, okay? Nothing is verified. I'm just talking rumors right now. Just rumors. It's all rumors. Nobody come at me. No one trash me in the comments for something that I said that is a rumor, okay? It's 100% a rumor. Jesus, these people, dude, they will literally scold you over anything.
Oh, there's ardent supporters of everyone's got, their Hollywood star they like to support, right? A lot of folks do at least, right? But if I may offer some additional commentary on this rumor you speak of. So I have you can call it a anointed theory if you want, but I have this theory that all of the lead actors in all of these Marvel and DC movies are all they're all Thelemites, right? They're all part of the cult network, right? Some offshoot of Thelema, of this OTO Thelemic offshoot network that spawned from the Golden Dawn. And I can give you numerous examples of that, but let me first explain that point. So it seems to me that Marvel and DC Comics comes from the same epicenter of activity with these pulp fiction writers, L. Ron Hubbard, and the Agape Lodge of the OTO with Jack Parsons, and then Scientology. And this is confirmed through the literary agent of many of these writers and the editor and manager of this sci-fi writers club, this infamous sci-fi writers club, right? So basically every sci-fi writer you can think of for the last 100 and whatever 20 years or so is part of this club, including the folks that started Marvel and DC Comics. And I would assert that Marvel Comics is really named after Marvel Whiteside Parsons, aka Jack Parsons, his birth name being Marvel Parsons. And you will see the same Thelemic kind of fan fiction in these storylines with galactic overlords, ancient alien cargo cult space activities, right? These things come from a long time ago in a universe far, far away, or a galaxy far, far away, right? Be it Star Wars or these Marvel aliens, right? Then you have Thanos and whatnot as your galactic overlords, kind of like Xenu. And then you have superpowers, kind of like Scientology's superpower building they just built down there a few years ago to the tune of tens of millions of dollars down in Clearwater. So when you look at somebody like Cavill, right, who plays Superman, a lot of these guys who play these roles have these weird proclivities for young women within these Marvel star and DC starring roles, right? And they seem to have an innate proclivity to start their own cult. For example, Jared Leto, the Joker from the Suicide Squad, Jack Parsons' team that invented the magical solid state rocket fuel, was known as the Suicide Squad. So you have Jared Leto from the film Suicide Squad playing Joker, and he starts his own cult. Right, he's got he dresses like white Jesus Christ, and runs around in a white robe and has a lot of followers in white. It's kind of creepy. You have the guy who played the Flash. That dude started a cult in Vermont and started pulling guns on 13-year-olds and raping, aggressively sexually assaulting young women.
That guy was a mess, bro. I don't know how they kept him around for that other Flash movie. It was a disaster, bro.
And then you got Wesley Snipes. He's one of my favorite ancient alien cargo cultists amongst this mix. He uses the blade.
Yes, please tell us about this. I didn't even know about this. You told me about this on the show with Headless.
Nice.
For sure, tell us about this.
So I like to joke that if anyone saw any folks of the interwebs, I mean, I get myself included in this mix. Actually, I'm guilty, but if you paid for a movie ticket or rented the film Blade 1, 2, or 3, you technically contributed to child sex trafficking. Funding child sex trafficking. But so Wesley Snipes produced those films and starred in them, right? The Blade films. It's a Marvel Comics series, but he starred in those. And actually, a lot of the new Marvel actors, including Ryan Reynolds and gang, they all credit Wesley Snipes with allowing them he laid the framework to make these Marvel big budget films, right? And in fact, Ryan Reynolds was in one of the Blade films. He's been in numerous DC and Marvel films besides Deadpool, like Green Lantern and Blade. But so Wesley Snipes produces these films under his production company, Amun-Ra Productions. Amun-Ra Productions, and he's a member of this cult called the New Wabian Nation, started by a guy by the name of Dwight York, who really started this cult more towards the late 70s, but it went through various iterations from the late 60s through the early 90s when it seems when Snipes got involved circa 1991. But a lot of this guy, Dwight York, Malachi Z, he sits in the federal penitentiary Supermax prison in Florence, Colorado today for a couple hundred years for child sex trafficking. He was the cult leader. He's also the man who invented hip hop and rap with folks like Africa Bambaataa, who's also got his own diddling situations these days and cult situations. But Snipes funds, he joins this cult and begins financing it. And by the late 90s, he's using Amun-Ra Productions and his Blade series to finance this cult. Amun-Ra Productions also owns the land this cult sets up on the adjacent property, the training center for the security force for this cult, which the security force was owned and licensed by Wesley Snipes himself, including the firearms licenses. He had firearms licenses for his security outfit there. Those are all under his name, under this Amun-Ra Productions, the same film production studio he owned. So they had a training compound in Georgia with the security force, but they were the security force for the compound across the street, which was the New Wabian Nation, which was a giant ancient Egyptian pyramids and sphinx built on some mounds in rural Georgia on a 400-acre lot in rural Georgia. So the PR spokesman for this cult would later identify Snipes amongst numerous other folks as the quote unquote New Wabian millionaires financing this cult. And again, there's a paper trail with Snipes finances with this Amun-Ra Productions. So around 2004, Dwight York would get busted for the child sex trafficking. And then around 2006, they got Snipes with the Al Capone prosecution. They prosecuted him for tax evasion.
Got him. Couldn't get him on nothing else, so they hit him with the tax evasion.
Yep, that's right. Yes, sir. And if I can bring up a picture of this compound. It's quite a structure. It's been torn down since.
Yes, please bring it up. When did they tear it down?
Tom Array. What was that? What was that, Ryder?
When did they tear it down?
I think it was completely razed by 2006. Now, the locals, a lot of the cult members, they stayed in the area, right? So in 2010, circa 2010, I think it's still an unsolved murder. I did a podcast on it. I did a show on it maybe 4 months ago. on Operation GCD. But some of those cult members, it appears, did a ritual human sacrifice and beheaded an elderly woman on a mound there in the area just outside where the compound used to exist. A wealthy couple there in one of the lived on one of the local lakes. But let me bring a picture here. So they're still a cult. They actually have a facility in Brooklyn, New York. In fact, if folks want to check that out, Nick on the Occult Rejects got some drone footage and everything else like that because he went and visited the site in Brooklyn. And I'm bringing up a picture of that right now while I'm looking for a good picture of the compound from Georgia. So this cult still exists. You know, it's like I said, Dwight York's in prison. Whether Wesley Snipes is still a member, I couldn't tell you, or whether or not the band Outkast is still a member, I couldn't tell you. But this is their Brooklyn center. It's an education center. It's open to the public, I think, on Sundays. They got a bookstore next door, of course. They own the whole block. The New Wabi Nation does. And Jay-Z, the first music video he appears in, is right here in this building in 1985.
Wild. An Egyptian cult in Georgia.
Yep. Yeah, these pictures don't do any justice either because they built three pyramids, I think, a sphinx, and they adopted this ancient alien cargo cult belief system where Dwight York was half alien, half Black Cherokee. So he was a mound builder. He was half alien, and because they built it on mounds down there, right? They were claiming independent sovereignty, right? So and then he so it's a very ancient Egyptian alien mound focused cult. But they had a nightclub in one of these buildings, and it was an unlicensed by the state of Georgia to serve alcohol. So obviously the state of Georgia had a lot of problems with it, and ultimately they came in there and raided it a couple times before the cult was taken down. But there was a lot of stuff like that going on around there. But when you say the Freemasonry stuff, though, Ryder, they started their own branch of Freemasonry. So there's an official recognized lodge of Prince Hall Freemasonry that is recognized as the New Wabi Nation Grand Lodge of Prince Hall Freemasonry. And Dwight York, to my understanding, may in fact still be the leader of that today while he sits in prison.
So is this building still standing or is it gone?
The one in Brooklyn?
This one that we're looking at right now on the screen. Oh, this is one of the pyramids, huh?
Yeah, it's one of the Sphinx and the pyramids. Yeah, the one in Brooklyn's still standing, and folks can visit that. Like I said, it's I think it's Sundays. It's open to the public.
Oh wow!
So this was built, I think. So Dwight York flees New York, I think, circa '92 when he meets Snipes around that same time. And him and Snipes start doing this compound up down in Georgia. He flees New York under charges of sexual assaults of children and things like that.
How tall do you think this pyramid is?
Yeah, I think it was more ornately looking than it was a structure, right? But they were large, right? At least, right? I don't know I'm looking for a height for it, but it wasn't a small project at all. You can see that the other pyramid we were just looking at, and the Sphinx is to the right of it. And this is another pyramid. I believe this is the one that housed the nightclub.
Wow. It reminds me of like the World's Fairs, right? How they would go around and like rebuild like Rome, like things that you would see in Rome, and then they would do the World's Fairs, and then they would come through and just destroy all of it.
Yep.
Seems like Wesley Snipes and his cult just kind of rebuilt Egypt and Georgia.
Yeah, I mean, this is an overhead shot of that compound, right? I mean, it's a substantial spot.
These are all the houses that the people in the cult would live in?
Yeah, they had a few hundred that lived on there and a few thousand supposedly that would live in the area, the region.
Wow.
But they have bookstores and locations across, I think, around 20 cities across the U.S. and Canada today. The New Wabi Nation does. They don't really have like chapter houses or churches, right? They have these bookstores, right? So you have the bookstore in Brooklyn, but you have their main center of worship there in Brooklyn as well. But this center, what we're looking at now, was all destroyed circa 2005, 2006.
Just came in and leveled it.
Yes, sir.
And then
So there's a
kind of
comment about Jeffrey Epstein, the pyramid to the light. Is that what they called his appearance? What's that about? I'm not familiar with that reference. Do you know that one?
what they
Pyramid to the right.
yeah, Donald says Jeff Epstein pyramid to the right. I don't know. I know Epstein had really strange things on his island.
Well, I think he was an occultist for sure. So Epstein, when I first started looking into him years ago, he looked at all those Florida documents. Right. This is probably I did a podcast. I actually just hit 9 years. I think it'll be two days. It'll be 9 years. I started Operation GCD because I was injured, recovering from a massive injury, paralyzing injury, and towards the end of my career there in the Air Force, and I was a reservist at that time because I'd left active duty. I did 13 active and 7 in the reserves, but that time I was in the reserves and rehabbing some injuries. So I was reading a ton before that because I'd already rehabbed another injury the year prior. But that's why I started Operation GCD. And one of the first topics I dove into was Jeffrey Epstein because, the Florida Sunshine Laws permitted all those documents to be available to the public from his case down there. So I was diving into that and looking at, because it's preposterous. I mean, dude builds a wing of the Palm Beach County Jail for him to check into on weekends for 13 months of an 18-month conviction that he got, of a plea agreement. And then every other time he's just signing out of there, right? He only has to spend 16 hours on the weekend in that jail of the wing that he built for himself, right? And, the other times he gets to sign out. Well, every time he signs out and going to his house and apparently to his island, it seems, he's not signing a signature on the sign out logs. He's signing an infinity symbol. Well, what appears to be an infinity symbol, like the sideways 8. So my understanding, that's some sort of magician's signature. And then you kind of look at his crowd is, so Ghislaine Maxwell's brother-in-law is the son of Frank Molina, Jack Parsons number 2 in the Suicide Squad. So there's a lot of occultism around that whole crowd, if you ask me. And of course, Ghislaine Maxwell's father was a Scientologist, Robert Maxwell.
Oh, it gets so deep. I've been doing shows on Virginia Giuffre and her apparent suicide, and it's just so convoluted and confusing, like the entire thing, bro. It's hard to even wrap your head around what's going on with it. But people sure like to roast you online about it when you leave out any kind of information about anything.
Well, if you don't blame that very small, small hat wearing nation over there in the Middle East, then apparently you're the problem. But again, it goes beyond just that. And I always call that problem the Rothschild problem anyway. So Maxwell, the mega group, the Rothschilds, the Bronfmans, these are all very small networks there that set up the nation of Israel, but along with other forces of a British variety. So it's never just one club. It's never as black and white as folks make it out to be. But it does seem that amongst these crew of these folk, they do have some ancient alien cargo cult belief systems of varying varieties, but notably Thelemic varieties. And like I said, Ghislaine Maxwell's brother-in-law is the son of Frank Molina and the Suicide Squad, who invented the solid-state rocket fuel, according to Parsons, through sex magic rituals, right?
Is there a statute of limitations on saying that you would never kill yourself, JJ Vance?
There shouldn't be. If there is, there shouldn't be.
I don't believe that there is. Okay, if you say that you're never going to kill yourself, that means that you're never going to kill yourself. Doesn't matter how much time passes in between you saying that you're never going to kill yourself and supposedly dying of suicide.
Yeah, there should be no requirement to revise that statement. That's for sure, right?
It's unbelievable. Like, people are trying to say, "Oh, well, that tweet from her was from 6 years ago in 2019. It's invalid." How the fuck is that invalid?
See, you've been going deep on the Giuffre stuff. I haven't got a chance to check out your podcast, but I have seen you doing a number of them on the subject. So what's your take on this matter?
Well, it's so convoluted, but the bus accident stuff, I'm going to give a brief breakdown here. The bus accident stuff is like a whole, like, huge rabbit hole that doesn't make any sense. The bus accident happened on the 24th, and this is the guy right here. This is the bus driver, Rosmans. He says that the bus accident was very minor. The bus accident wasn't even reported until the day after. The police never showed up to the bus accident, yet she is in the hospital. looking like this, severely beat up on the side of her face. Looks like she was punched repeatedly in the side of her face. So the police said that the bus accident was minor. There was no kids on the bus. The bus driver says that the bus was full of kids, that it only took out a tail light, and that he didn't even see Virginia that was in the car. It was an elderly woman, which was supposedly her caretaker of that time, which we know what caretaker means. Caretaker just means a handler, right? You got a handler as
Right.
a caretaker. And then when you look into it a little bit more, you realize that Virginia's husband is a domestic violence abuser.
Yep.
He's been beating her for allegedly over 10 years. Virginia Giuffre alleges the husband has physically abused her for years. I can no longer stay silent. And then she made this statement to People magazine less than a week after she was released from the hospital that if she has that she was able to fight back against Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein, who abused and trafficked me, but I was unable to escape the domestic violence of my marriage until recently after my husband's latest physical assault. I can no longer stay silent. And you kind of got to put two and two together here, JJ, but when you do, you realize that she's in the hospital for her husband beating her, not from the bus accident. What other beating would she be referring to that is of recent? It would be the one where she was in the hospital for looking like that she got the shit beat out of her face or repeatedly punched in the side of the face, right?
Yeah, for
It's
sure.
not hard. It's not hard to put two and two together on that. Okay. And even her sister-in-law is saying that in this People magazine article of that she's not for sure if all of the injuries came from the bus accident or they came from her husband beating her. Virginia's brother Sky Roberts and his wife Amanda, both 36, say Virginia, who lives in Australia, is making the allegations because of the severity of her injuries. I think that the last accident that they had, she almost died, Amanda said, about the alleged January 9th beating. And there's proof of Virginia Giuffre's husband beating her because there was a police report that was filed January 9th earlier in the year where he beat her to an inch of her life.
Wow.
And she filed a police report on it, but then her husband turns around and files a family restraining order against her to set up his defense, right? In case something happens in the future
Sure.
and she ends up dead, then the suspicion will never fall on him because he has his defense already in place. He's got this family restraining order against her and he's had the kids for all this time.
And he's a martial arts expert of some regard, right?
That's right. He's a martial arts expert out of Australia. And then
Right.
how they met was in Thailand whenever Jeffrey Epstein sent Virginia to massage school in Thailand. He was just randomly in Thailand. Coincidence, right?
Right. Yeah, I got a lot of questions about Giuffre in general, right? Just her existence. So she's allegedly recruited into the network out of that Florida case I was referring to before, right? She was an employee at her father was an employee at Mar-a-Lago. And I believe Ghislaine Maxwell recruited her out of the women's locker room, as the story goes, as a 14-year-old.
Yeah, so her dad worked at Mar-a-Lago as a maintenance manager. Whenever they moved from Sacramento, California, her mom, I just did a whole ancestry thing on this
Nice.
yesterday.
Yeah, he was still working there, right? In recent years, though, right? He never left, right? He kept working there, I think.
Well, her mom married a gentleman named Craig T. Wilson in 1978, and then they had a son, and that's Daniel Wilson, which would be her half brother. And then Virginia's mom, Lynn, divorced Craig T. Wilson in 82, and then remarried Virginia's dad, Sky Roberts, in 82, and then they had Virginia in 83. And then whenever Virginia was 4, they moved to Florida, and then they had Sky Rocket Roberts, Virginia's actual brother, in Florida in 1989, sorry. These dates and everything is super confusing,
Sure.
and it's a lot to remember. And then Virginia's dad got the job in Mar-a-Lago, and that's how they met Epstein. And then he got Virginia a job in, I think, the spa area or something, and that's how they met Epstein. And
Yep.
then she's going all these trips with Epstein, like all over everywhere. But
I think she was 14, right? When she got recruited.
yes, and then whenever she met her husband in the early 2000s in Thailand, whenever Giuffre sent her to massage school, she then cut off contact with Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell and married the husband, the dude that she just met 10 days later in Thailand.
And then Trump bans Epstein over this matter, right?
I'm not for sure if it was exactly this thing, but I'm sure it had something to do with it. So this beating that she suffered earlier in the year was during a trip to celebrate one of Virginia's children's birthday in January. Robert allegedly beat Virginia so severely she was left with a cracked septum, a bruised eye, among other injuries. They say she was transported to the hospital for her injuries, a spokeswoman said. To the family's shock, they say Robert quickly filed a family violence restraining order alleging that she had beat him, which in this earlier beating, the description that we have, because we're not able to get the police report of exactly the injuries she had, she would probably look something like this.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like a hand mark for sure. This caused that injury. Slapping, but looks a lot like slapping to me.
So then she gets out of the hospital on April 7th. This is her and her two brothers.
Mm-hmm.
She gets out of the hospital.
She looks a lot older in that picture than she did in the previous photo.
So out of the hospital on April 7th, discharged from St. Charles Gardner Hospital. She posted that Instagram photo on March 30th, 6 days after the bus accident. And then she ends up dead on the 25th. Okay, and there's no investigation. No investigation into her husband that is a proven domestic violence abuser and has been abusing her for 10 years. So she gets out of the relationship with, well, not even the relationship, the trafficking of Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and then is immediately put into another situation where she gets constantly abused.
Yeah, exactly. Right. It's weird, right? And then like during that relationship, about 10, we'll call it circa 8 years ago, she sues Alan Dershowitz sues her, or she sues Alan. I think Alan Dershowitz sues her and she countersues. It's based upon her book claiming that Alan Dershowitz diddled her, and she wrote that in her book, right? The result of that lawsuit, she hires David Boies, who's a big member of the Clinton legal team. He also, as a result of that, represented Clintonites and Clinton Operation Theranos and Elizabeth Holmes. And he was her attorney, and he actually got stock in that company. He came in at a real shady time. So this is a black bag man of all black bag men, this David Boies character. But he represents, Giuffre hires him in that lawsuit with Dershowitz. And the outcome of that lawsuit is so bizarre. It's a civil lawsuit, and somehow the result of it in that New York court, Dershowitz represented himself, of course. Dershowitz and Boies make these. I'm not an attorney. I'm also not the vice president, but I am a student of legal stuff, and it's the most obscure legal arguments I've ever seen. I had no idea what's going on. I still don't know what's happened in this case, and I've asked attorneys, and they can't tell me. But somehow Dershowitz and Boies, in this case of Giuffre versus Dershowitz, got criminal evidence in the Epstein file case sealed under court order in that case. So both sides, it's ultimately, I think, just kind of settled and went their separate ways, I think is the outcome, I think. And then somehow evidence was disappeared in the case. So,
well, they tried to make her out to be a liar with that whole Alan Dershowitz stuff because she dropped the charges.
Right.
Because
that's right.
Of all that you just explained. Okay. Yep. So
it was such a strange case.
Very strange, but the charges that weren't dropped was against Prince Andrew, and Prince Andrew settled out of court for reportedly $12 million and somewhere upwards of $19 million.
Right,
What
right.
they
So you
do is
remember that incident where
they try and make these accusers and these people out to be like liars. That's why
Sure.
the whole thing with the bus accident, there's so much nonsensical garbage and painting her out to be a liar. I mean, Prince Andrew's ex-girlfriend, whenever she was involved in the bus accident, she was posting all of these stories on Instagram saying that this is karma. This is what you get, Virginia Giuffre, for being a liar. Okay. So they made up this whole bus accident continuity stuff to try and paint her out to be a liar whenever she's actually in there lying to cover up for her husband beating her, because she can't say that the injuries came from her husband because her husband already has the defense set up.
right.
He already has the family violence restraining order against her. If she were then
He's got the
to
upper hand.
go in there and start saying, "Oh, this was my husband that gave me these injuries," they're probably not going to believe her.
Right.
Because her husband has had the kids for this entire time, and he has the family violence restraining order. So she's in a really big situation here. But then she gets on and gives this exclusive statement to People Magazine. This People Magazine article is literally all you need to read. It all makes sense. Once you read this entire People Magazine article, she says that she, in a roundabout way, says that the injuries did not come from the bus accident. They came from her husband beating her. Her brother and her sister-in-law essentially say that the next time that she gets into an altercation with her husband, she might not make it out alive. Okay. You just gotta just use your brain for 2 seconds and put 2 and 2 together on it. And if her husband wasn't the one that killed her, he is definitely implicated here, in some investigation 100% needs to be done
Sure.
on Robert Giuffre here, which is so interesting because Robert Giuffre, his first name is Robert. You got Sky Williams Roberts, which is Virginia's dad. You have Virginia's brother, that is Sky Rocket Roberts. You got Daniel Wilson, which is her half brother. Then you got Sky Williams. Like, all these people share the same types of names somewhere in their middle name, their first name, or their last name. It's so strange.
It is strange. And I was going to ask you, like, what's your thoughts? It doesn't sound like she ever left any sort of control network here, and they may not have been done trafficking her, but it sounds like, well, I'm worried about what are they doing with those kids. You know what I mean? Maybe she was just around to make some kids, and then they're done with her for that now too, right?
My exact thoughts right here, new kind. How the fuck is he not in fucking prison? That is right.
Yep.
My thoughts exactly. You took the words right out of my mouth. And I think that 100% this dude is involved. I think that it's possible that the entire freaking family
Yeah.
is involved.
Well, that's what I was getting at. So a couple years ago, Trump did a photograph with her father down there at Mar-a-Lago after, giving him a certificate or like a plaque saying, celebrating 25 years of service at Mar-a-Lago or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not 100% sure how long he worked at Mar-a-Lago. I didn't get into those records on the show yesterday, but he definitely worked in Sacramento as a maintenance guy. Then I think he runs his own business now. I don't think he works at Mar-a-Lago anymore. I think he runs his own horse business or whatever. But he's a cross-dresser, dude.
I did not know that. The only picture I've seen of the man is the one he did with Trump. And again, I don't know when it was taken, but I've seen it in recent years where he's doing some sort of, commemorating him for a long period of time. They're working at Mar-a-Lago, but no idea he was a cross-dresser. It's brand new information.
Yes, let's find. I showed this on.
Let's check this out.
One of my shows.
The research department is dug up here.
Dude, Facebook can reveal pretty much everything here. I'm surprised he hasn't made this Facebook page private, but I wanted to try and be nice to him because I wanted to actually bring him on and ask him all this shit.
Sure.
which I still have hope for. May still be able to contact him. So here is his Facebook page, Sky Roberts. This is Virginia Giuffre's dad. Scroll down here a little bit. Right here.
Oh, okay. Well, that's
That's
right in your face, isn't it?
Is that you? Kimberly Roberts right here. Comment on the picture. I love this picture of you, Sky. Your makeup looks better than mine.
I mean, with a name like Sky, it's already an ambiguously gendered name, right?
He says, no, I'm pretty sure that's you. This is his wife right now, Kimberly Roberts, I believe. Let's click on her page real quick.
Kimberly
Lives in
Roberts.
Spokane, Washington. Let's see what the about is. Maybe it's not, but that's definitely him though in that photo.
Yeah, it certainly looks like the guy I recall seeing in the one picture. You know, as far as the facial structure kind of goes, kind of a squirrely looking fella.
Okay, well, I guess that's not actually his wife. But this looks like identical to him.
I'm looking for that picture with him and Trump. I'll have to get back to you on that one. Yeah, it was. I'm not sure when he left there. I just thought it was interesting when I saw that. I was like, well, it was clearly after the incident where Epstein was banned and whatnot. So I want to say maybe it was during his first administration, like leading up to that, around that time, maybe. But you know, I thought it was odd that the guy kept working there. I'm like, well, that's kind of strange, right?
Yeah, I mean, the whole thing is like super strange, but there has to be an investigation on her freaking husband, Robert Giuffre. I mean, there's no way around it. And her dad is even saying that there's no way that she committed suicide. Her lawyer is saying that maybe it's accidental, but this isn't the first Jeffrey Epstein or Ghislaine Maxwell victim that has died of suicide either. Virginia is actually the third one. Okay, so you got two others. Jeffrey Epstein case, Virginia Giuffre's death marks third loss. Experts say predators need to be punished. Okay, so including Virginia Giuffre, you have Caroline Andriano, who testified against Ghislaine Maxwell during her sex trafficking trial, died May 23rd, 2023, after an accidental drug overdose in West Palm Beach, Florida hotel room. Okay, that's the second one. Leah Sky Patrick died at the age of 29 after a drug overdose in West Palm Beach, Florida in 2017. The police adding that the overdose was accidental. Now, her lawyer, Virginia Giuffre's lawyer, oh man, some of these links are dead. I've had these links open for like weeks because I don't want to lose them.
Like an Epstein victim. Someone killed him. So, here's the question I have for you, Ryder. You bring up some excellent points. You know, in the court sealing of all these victims' names and the lack of publication of any of these victims' names, etc., we don't know who the other victims are. How many more victims have been killed, right? What a great way to kill victims if you just seal some names and then start offing folks.
Yeah. Yeah, and then this autopsy of Virginia Giuffre is supposedly going to take 2 freaking years. Okay, so it's understood that Virginia overdosed on pills. This is from the U.S. Sun article. It is understood that Virginia overdosed on pills just like the 2 previous overdoses that we just went over. Okay, 1 or 2 could be circumstantial. It could be a coincidence, but 3 JJ accidental overdoses?
Yeah.
Okay. Then her lawyer is saying there's suicide and then there's misadventure. So he's essentially, it's a she. It's Carrie Lundin is her name. That's her right here, Carrie Lundin.
Yep.
My bad, guys. I get things wrong too, okay? I'm not freaking perfect. All right?
It happens. Genders these days.
We've got big question marks all over it, Carrie added. There's suicide and then there's misadventure. I didn't see her in a room. I wasn't there. The family said, I'm not going to speculate whether it was suicide or accidental. So he's proposing I did it again. She is proposing. You never know with all these transgender freaking fluidity people. You never freaking know with a name like Carrie Lundin. Carrie could be a dude or it could be a woman. You never freaking know.
I forgot my trans decoder ring today, so I'm just as confused.
Yeah, I need my trans radar out. So she is basically proposing that it's accidental, just like the two other Jeffrey Epstein victims that I just mentioned, Leah Sky Patrick, and that's another Sky.
There you
It's
go.
another Sky. Okay, so you got a middle name of a Jeffrey Epstein victim's name is Sky. You got her dad's name, Sky Williams Roberts. Her brother's name, Sky Rocket Roberts.
Yep.
It's insanity. And then Caroline Andriano that also died of an accidental drug overdose. But in this Sun article, it says it could take up to 2 years until the coroner's report is filed.
It doesn't make any sense.
2 years. So since there's no investigation on her death being a homicide or anything suspicious happening with her death, that it's going to be ruled a suicide or an accidental suicide is going to take 2 years. And there's a statute of limitations in Australia as well. It's 1 to 5 years. So even if
they're gaming the system, huh?
So even if the coroner finds something that is suspicious, it's going to make it very difficult for anybody to do anything other than it being ruled a suicide because of statute of limitations in Australia.
For sure.
So we got to wait 2 years to get the coroner's report or the autopsy report. And then the statute of limitation is 1 to 5 years, depending on the case. So
it's pretty wild. It's pretty wild.
It's super wild, dude.
I like how we always land on Epstein in these conversations. No matter what I talk about, I can almost always connect it to Epstein. It's the 6 degrees of Jeffrey Epstein.
Yeah, and then people are coming at me. Oh, you're trying to say that you're not letting people know that her saying that she would never commit suicide in that tweet happened 6 years ago. Yes, I have. Every single time I've ever brought this up, I say that she posted that she would never kill herself 6 years ago on the post. Okay, I've said that every single time, but there's no statute of limitations from the time that you say that you're not suicidal from the time that it apparently happens. Okay, there is none. When you say that you're not suicidal and you would never kill yourself, means that you're not suicidal and that you would never kill yourself anytime at any point in the future. That's what I believe.
Do you think she's dead? Do you think she's actually dead, or what are your?
I 100% believe that she's dead. I mean, there's been people that say that the photo of her in the hospital is of a corpse, but that's not true. There's photos of her out after the hospital where she's pictured after the bus crash, which I guess is a good time to bring that up to squash any of those people.
It was an odd claim there, right? With her claim she's got 4 days to live because of some kidney situation or something, right? Was that part of it? Am I making that up?
Okay, so this is when she left the hospital. She pulled into a feed store near the Royal Retreat in north of Perth in the blue Chevrolet Silverado being driven by a bearded man, which I believe is her her half brother, Daniel Wilson. And this is her in the vehicle after she left the hospital.
She looks relatively healthy, right?
Yeah, she looks pretty good. So here's her and her half brother. So they're pictured outside of the hospital, so she can't be dead in the photos. Okay, it's just an impossibility. Here she is, and here's her half brother.
Right. Not driving because it's Australia, right?
Yeah, he's driving because the driver's side is on the right side of the vehicle in Australia. Right. So she can't be. This can't be a corpse here. So. And of course, people are going to argue with me that these photos are faked. These are fake photos. This isn't even her, but it is her.
I mean, you can even see a little bit of bruising there on that forehead still, right? You see what I'm saying? You see that mark on the forehead still, that slap mark. what appears to be two
Yep.
fingers.
Yep. So this is her after she left the hospital, and I'm pretty sure that this is her brother right here. Doesn't that look like the same guy?
Yeah,
This
yeah,
is
yeah.
Daniel Wilson here on the right. This is her actual biological brother, Skyrocket Roberts
Yep.
here on the left. Take a good look at this guy here on the right. Cinch him into your brain. This, and then look at this guy.
Oh, it's the same white of the beard too, right?
Yeah, I think that's her half brother. That's driving the vehicle after the hospital accident.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah.
You can see the white beard is the same.
Yeah. So that's my investigation on the Virginia Giuffre case. I'm glad we
Nice.
brought it up because I had to clear up some things.
There you go.
People have been
And
after me.
not really. What's that?
People have been after me, freaking hounding me.
It's a hot
Telling me
topic.
that I'm making shit up, and I just keep posting this freaking People magazine article that proves that her husband beat the shit out of her earlier in the year.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's such a very contentious topic. Anything you get into Epstein, you know what I mean? Like it gets very polarizing very quick. I feel like folks are very set in their positions, almost like. And I have a lot of questions about the situation because I really wonder. Not like anyone really ever talks about it, but Les Wexner gets a free pass on everything. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This is a guy who not only on Victoria's Secret and everything else like that, which you saw in Abercrombie, you got the Abercrombie guy getting busted on some sort of sex trafficking. I don't think it was children though, but Wexner also bought the Air America from the CIA. I mean, he was running those same routes with his clothing lines over to the South Pacific. So there's a lot to be, a lot of questions with that, maybe not non-Epstein, but they're at least all related to Wexner, who was his only client, who gave him a townhouse, the largest townhouse in Manhattan.
Dude, the rabbit hole goes so freaking deep. So deep. I don't even know how I've kept track of all this stuff, to be honest. I've just been looking at it and doing shows on it like all the time. So it's fresh in my memory and I can remember it pretty well, but it's so convoluted and there's so much more stuff to go into. I mean, looking at her family tree, it's all convoluted. I mean, people say that that her brothers are actually her stepbrothers, but they're not really her stepbrothers. They're Sky Roberts is her real biological brother. Daniel Wilson is her half brother from a previous marriage with her mother. Nobody knows where her mother is. We don't know if her mother is still alive. I saw a obituary from the ancestry.com yesterday, but I couldn't find out exactly if she's dead. Her brother, Sky Rocket Roberts, is supposedly from Colorado Springs. Daniel Wilson is supposedly from Florida, which doesn't make any sense because he was born in California 3 years before Virginia was born. So he would have been 3 whenever Virginia was born. They left. So he would have been 7 years old. He would have lived 7 years in Sacramento, California before they picked up and moved to Florida. So you would think that he would put his hometown as California and not Florida, but maybe he doesn't. Maybe he feels like that because he doesn't remember anything from California, so he just puts that he's, from Florida. But that doesn't explain why Sky Rocket Roberts says that he is from Colorado and grew up in Colorado. It doesn't make any sense. None of it makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But what you're describing to me sounds a lot like the activities of a family who's involved in a sex cult. You have multiple siblings with varying questionable parentage. You have a lot of half siblings. You have various travels that don't seem to comport with the means of economically speaking, or necessarily motives that move across the country, other than maybe these people are part of a sex cult.
Well, then you get into, who gets the rest of the money that Virginia is owed from Prince Andrew? Does her family get it? Because all that money wasn't paid out. I'm pretty confident that Prince Andrew did not pay out the entire thing in one large lump sum. Nobody ever pays out any kind of lawsuit in one large lump sum. Whenever you, settle out of court, or if you sue a corporation or you sue an individual, they are not required to pay you all that in one large lump sum. It's normally spread out over a period of years. So she's probably maybe
annualized payments, annuities,
in the past 2 years gotten a quarter of the money that she's owed. So who does the money that go to that Prince Andrew owes for the rest of the money? Does it revert back to Prince Andrew? Does he not have to pay it now?
It might.
Does
that's sealed, right? That was a sealed settlement, right? So you bring up some good points there. I mean, it might go back to Andrew, right?
That's pretty suspicious.
Oh, for sure.
Your accuser dies a couple of years after you settle out of court with her.
That's big time suspicious, but it's par for the course with these folks, Ryder. Because if you recall these incidents after that Giuffre lawsuit with Dershowitz, when Dershowitz is running some interference in the media to tell everyone that his pal Prince Andrew and didn't tell anybody, nor did Jeffrey Epstein, to his understanding, because he only got one massage by an adult masseuse, according to Dershowitz. He doesn't like massages, but he was forced to. He tried to leave his shirt on, but they wouldn't let him. These are the nonsense that he says. But it's Dershowitz though that he does an interview running interference on these matters, trying to describe it. Well, Prince Andrew's a good guy. And it's in his apartment up there in Boston. And he's got on the couch behind him. He's at a table, right? I think it's British 60 Minutes. They're sitting like a table in his living room or whatever. And on the couch behind him, near the window in the living room, there's like a senior citizen, like old lady sex doll. The entire time is sitting on the couch behind them in frame when they're talking about how Prince Andrew isn't a violator of young women. It's just bizarre. It's the weirdest. Like, put away your old lady sex doll, Alan. No one wants to see that.
Tim says, wouldn't the heirs inherit that judgment? Well, we would hope so, but I definitely don't want her woman beater, husband, domestic violence abuser, narcissist dickbag to get her money.
Yeah, I don't know. And they live in Australia too, so those are different laws over there.
Way different. I don't know how it works. I don't know if it would revert back to Andrew or if it would go to her, which the whole thing between her and her husband seems to be a complete setup and concoction of Jeffrey Epstein from the very beginning.
For sure.
Which seems like to be another handler of her.
Seems that way.
Well, JJ, not the president, not the vice president. Can you let people know where to find you, brother?
Ryder, I appreciate the conversation and your time and the invite. Definitely we'll have to link back up again in the future and keep exploring these ancient alien cargo cult ideas and how they impact our parapolitical atmosphere here in our modern era of censorship here in America, where we don't have free speech, thanks to folks like the Nazis and the National Security Act of 1947, which eradicated free speech here in America. The folks of the interwebs can find me. Appreciate everyone's time checking in here with us today. And find me on Wednesday nights at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, Operation GCD Live, and Fridays with the Occult Rejects, host Nick, on 9 p.m. Eastern Times. And coming soon here, very soon, probably not this Sunday, but next, I'll be doing a subscriber-only show on Sunday nights at 8 p.m., Operation GCD Live. So please check it out. Great times, Ryder.
Appreciate you, my friend. Please be sure to hit the thumbs up button to help the channel and the algorithm. Share, subscribe, hit the bell icon as well for notifications. And if you're listening on JJ's because he's streaming this to his YouTube and his X page as well, you can find me on Raised by Giants on YouTube and any and all podcast platforms. The links to JJ's information will be in the description of this video. Thanks for coming on, guys. Thanks, everyone in the chat. Appreciate each and every single one of you. And we'll talk to you guys next time. Bye-bye. JJ, stay with me.